A náš následující host k nám přiletěl z velké dálky až z toho nejjižnějšího cípu Indie. Pojďme si ho představit.
Tojin Eapen je vyhledávaným autorem, výzkumníkem a pedagogem v oboru augmentované reality a strategického designu. Vyrůstal v katarském Dauhá, studoval elektroinženýrství a elektroniku v indickém Kóžik-Kótu, studium filozofie absolvoval na proslulé Severokarolínské univerzitě v Chapel Hill. V jeho indickém Kočinu ve státě Kerala založil a vede Centrum pro kreativní prognózování. Jeho články v Harvard Business Review budí zasloužený ohlas. Jeho kniha o strategickém designu a řízení inspirovaném přírodou vyšla před pár týdny a stále září novotou.
Tojin Eapen, can you please join me on the stage? Hello.
Thank you.
Potlesk, prosím. And let's skip right to it. The stage is yours. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so it's wonderful for me to be here. First time I'm in Prague, and lovely people. But I know that in a group of very creative people, someone who speaks on the topic of AI is public enemy number one. Okay, so I'm that person. But hopefully, through the session, I'm going to give you some information and some ideas which will be a source of encouragement rather than disappointment. Just a quick introduction about myself. I am from India. I am the founder of the Center for Creative Foresight, which is an international research body that I founded, where we work on big ideas that can help transform societies. I work with my colleagues around the world. Before this, I was a professor of marketing at the University of Missouri in the United States. I've also been a consultant for several years working with companies in the area of innovation. Some of my recent work have been published by Harvard Business Review. One of that, which I'll be mostly speaking today. I work mostly in the area of innovation and new product development, and also in the area of creativity. So this is my book that came out a few months ago, called Bio-Inspired Strategic Design. Slightly different from what I'm used to doing. So here I looked at how we can learn from nature in guiding strategic thinking. So I worked with my colleague who is a US military officer. It took us 4 years to write this book, and thankfully we were able to complete it, and it came out. And it's another of my recent works. So today I want to talk about what we call augmenting creativity. So essentially, when we're in the age of generative AI, there's a lot of discussion on how AI is changing the nature of workforce, changing the nature of employment, and particularly I see there are lots of young people here, and I also speak and teach at business schools. And I see that there is some amount of apprehension about the future of how work is going to be, and in particularly professions that are creative, including marketing. So I want to sort of think about these ideas, and I sort of talk about the emerging consensus that a lot of the people feel that AI is really not going to take away jobs, right? It's not going to get rid of the occupation. Instead, it's going to help people work or complement the capabilities of human individuals, at least for areas that are very high quality outputs. Okay, so before that, I know AI is something that most of you would have read about, but I just want to make sure we're on the same page. And what is AI? Very basic definition. It's a simulation of human intelligence. So we're trying to simulate how human minds operate through machines. And AI is an old topic. It's been around for over 80 years. And what we see interestingly is that there are all these different ages of AI. Beginning with the earliest programs that try to simulate basic systems, followed by this age of what was called the golden age of AI, where there was so much optimism, techno-optimism, where people felt that, we're going to have this new world where, robots would take over jobs, and we just have to sit and watch TV, I guess. But that was followed by this age of disappointment, where a lot of these exciting imagination did not really fall into place. Fast forward, the 1990s, and up to 2020, you have what's the age of machine learning, right? So you may have heard of that term. Essentially, machine learning is all about prediction. So you have lots and lots of data, a lot of that coming from internet and customer data, and you're using that information to make predictions, right? Predictions about when if the customer is going to buy your product, prediction about whether the ad is going to be clicked or not. So that is when a personal story, when I started studying this topic when I was doing my doctoral program, and I was coming from this background of innovation and creativity, and I was studying how AI and machine learning could be actually helpful to evaluate creativity. Whether you have an idea, can AI tell you whether it's a creative idea or not? But if you ask me, and I was working in this space, well, can AI be creative? Okay, can AI actually do creative things? And I would say definitely not, right? And if you ask the vast majority of people who were working in that space, both creativity researchers as well as people who are working in AI, my guess is that most of them would have said, no, AI cannot be creative. It can sort of replace a lot of other things, but creativity is something that is mostly human. It's a human quality. Fast forward, 2024, you ask people the same question. Can AI be creative? So now it's become a lot more polarized debate. There are people who still say that no, AI cannot be creative, right? But they're a minority. There are lots of people who say, well, it's much more gray. It's hard to tell. It depends on what creativity means, right? So welcome to the world of generative AI, right? So this is sort of, it's something that we all have heard of and used. Okay, so this is technology which is enabling, machines to create content that ostensibly looks to be creative, right? And and people start saying things like, well, here's this technology that's going to be so revolutionary that most of us, including professors and lecturers and teachers and researchers and marketeers, we're all going to lose our jobs, right? So that's the kind of doomsday scenario some people are saying, and for some reason they want us to be excited about it as well, right? And and you see almost every day new tools that are coming into play, which makes us, help us make better and faster images, right? And you can see some of these technologies have evolved fairly quickly. So this is something that I made. So I'm from South India, from a place called Kerala, and we eat dishes that look like this, right? It's called a thali, right? So what I did was, try to use the oldest version of this text-to-image model called Midjourney, and asked it to make an image of Superman eating, our dish. And Superman obviously is not from my home state. And so it created those images, and you can see how remarkable, the quality, okay, and I use that term carefully, has changed over the few years, right? And if you look at the first application in general of this technology, and I was a marketing professor at the University of Missouri, and I see that the biggest implication, at least what's felt immediately, is in the world of marketing, right? Marketing is, in general, a lot about content creation, right? And a lot of that is creative. And so this is one area where there's a lot of both excitement and at the same time angst and concern, right? How is this going to shape my work and the way I'm doing things? Okay, so I'll give you a small example of this. Logo design, right? I know that branding and logo design are something we should see distinctly, but this is an area where, we have lots of people actually designing logos and making money out of it, but then you have tools like Ideogram, which can actually do this fairly quickly. Even now, these tools are not as good as the best artists or graphic designers. But what it has done, it's made making a logo extremely cheap, right? And that's changing, again, the way the marketing is done. And similarly, we have seen new models emerge. If you've been paying attention in the last couple of months, you've seen these remarkable improvements in video models like Runway ML, where you can prompt and it's generating video fairly quickly, right, with a user prompt. So what does this mean for the future of creativity? What does this mean for the future of marketing? To be honest, I don't have an answer, but I think it's something that we all have to grapple with and think about. So that's where I think my work entered into the debate. So this was in January 2023, where I started studying this problem, and my contention and that of my authors was that the biggest opportunity of these technology was not in replacing humans. It was rather to help people be more creative, right? And at that time, it was a novel contention. Not many people were speaking about this. So people were saying, well, this is the great thing since sliced bread. The other group of people were saying, well, this is a dangerous technology. Where we took a different stance, which said, you know what, there's this huge opportunity where this technology can actually help humans be even more creative, right? And that's a bold claim, and that's what we wrote about, and it was published as the cover article of the June issue of Harvard Business Review magazine. It was published in 7 languages around the world. Millions of people have read it, and it's been a huge influence in the way people think about generative AI, both in the academic and the business world. And I want to talk about a few ideas that we talk about in that article, and I want to challenge you to think about what some of those opportunities might be for you to use these tools not as a replacement for your creativity, but rather as a tool that can make you a person who is much more creative or come up with more creative outputs. Okay, so the first thing that we talk about is how AI can help in divergent thinking. So divergent thinking is essentially ideas that are new and novel. And when you study the theory of creativity, which is, professors and scientists have studied this for over 100 years, one idea that comes out very prominently is that creativity is about the clash of concepts, right? So there are different words for this, association, conceptual blending, so people have used different terms, but if you sort of dig beneath the surface, it's a very simple idea that creativity is about the combination or clash of ideas. So when you have different ideas and when you combine them or intersect them in an interesting way, then you have something that is creative. Now one of the things that people make a mistake in when they look at tools like ChatGPT or Claude is they ask it to generate ideas, right? So give me 10 ideas to improve my business model. Now, often what it does, it sort of picks out from ideas from its training data and then gives out the data, gives out those information. But what we've seen is that some of these tools have a powerful capability to associate. So once you give these prompts, once you give these initial concepts, it can actually do a fairly good job of connecting concepts and creating something that is actually not present in the training data. So images speak louder than words, so I want to give you some pictures. So here, I'm from the south of India. We have lots of wildlife there. Most famously elephants, but we also have butterflies. So what I've done here is I've asked a text-to-image model to generate a butterfly that looks like an elephant. Now, so what it does, interestingly, and this is very interesting for me when I first tried this over 24 months ago, right, was that it would generate images like this. Okay? So quickly, can someone tell me something interesting about this image? Okay, so clearly there's something of an elephant there, and there's also something of a butterfly, but something beyond. Is there something interesting beyond that? Okay, so what we found interesting, right, I hope you'll agree with me here, is that AI is able to seemingly detect analogical resemblances between the two creatures. For example, it understands that the ears of the elephant is similar, right, at least perfunctorily similar to the butterfly wings. And it uses that similarity as a basis of uniting and blending these two concepts. And we said, wow, that looks interesting, right? And maybe this idea can be taken forward. And what we did is we started thinking about, well, can you blend maybe a natural concept, an animal or a living creature and a product? And lo and behold, these tools were very good at doing that. So again, we love elephants from where I come from, and so elephant-inspired products, right? Elephant-inspired chairs. Again, this is remarkable because these images, as far as we can tell, are not in the training data. They're actually synthetically generated by the system. And now imagine the possibilities, right? If you have a company or a business, and think about how quickly you can actually come up with interesting and novel products. Again, one thing I want to talk about, and again, I want to make this and reiterate this point again and again, the ideas that AI gives out are never perfect or are never complete. It's only when the human is involved in taking that raw concept, right, and improving it, that it actually becomes something innovative, that's something valuable. So that in no way are we saying that we can take this and then convert that into a product without human involvement, but it's an aid, a tool that can actually make humans to challenge their ideas and come up with interesting products. And here's an interesting example where I think it goes beyond what we would think is common sense, right? So, for example, in this case, you have a frog and a glasses, and we think, okay, let's combine these two things, right? Let's combine these two concepts which are unrelated, right? And how do we combine them, right? And what we know from creativity is that you can, when something is understood to be creative or interesting, if you can combine them in an unexpected way, but it also makes sense, right? It's not just about putting an eyeglass on a frog. It's something, well, can we do this? Can we unite these two concepts so that inherently it makes some kind of a sense? So for example, in this particular case, well, you can think about frog-inspired goggles, right? So here there's a frog, and there are associated concepts like water, right? Or underwater objects, and you have goggles, swimming goggles, and you see the word water can be used to unite this concept, and you have a product that, even though it unites these unrelated concepts, it appears sensible, okay? It appears easy for our brains to process and understand, and it's a product that that a lot of people would potentially be interested in buying, right? And so this can be extended, and you can look at all kinds of products, chairs, pillows, and vases, and knives, and you can think about, are there other inspirations for these products? In this case, we took all kinds of different animals, and we intersected it with different kinds of products, and we came up with all these designs which are interesting and also appealing because it's sort of sensible in a peripheral way, right? So we took this to the next level, and we call that Trisociation, the method of Trisociation. Now, Trisociation at this basic level is very simple. You're trying to come up with a new idea, but you're trying to connect three concepts, okay? And this method was not new. We did not come up with this concept. This was actually first written about by a famous American designer named Victor Papanek. He was the dean of the California CalArts School. And he sort of wrote maybe half a page about this method, which said, well, if you want to come up with a creative idea, why don't you try combining three concepts, right? So everybody knows about combining two concepts. Can you take it to three? But I've never seen this method ever used by a business or a team to generate ideas. And the reason being is that it's extremely hard for average person to connect three concepts, right? It's fairly easy for someone to connect and combine two concepts. The moment you add a third concept, it becomes extremely challenging, right? And that's where AI we found to be extremely helpful in this process, because it is able to actually combine more than two concepts. It's able to combine three concepts, but it does not, interestingly, do a good job of combining four concepts. So three seems to be this almost optimum, where if you give three concepts and ask it to unite it, it does a fairly good job. So in this example, I've asked it to make a chair that's inspired by an elephant and a butterfly. So here's one design that it gives. So essentially, you have almost an infinite source of ideas that can come out, again, as a first step, right? Not as a complete final product, but something that can help you think differently and can help you in the process of product design, right? So these are some of the ideas that were, so we sort of put it out in Harvard Business Review. So these are candies inspired by butterflies and chocolate. Brooches, right? There's an interesting story here. These designs came in, the Harvard Business Review. Within a couple of weeks, somebody in Mexico was actually making this product and selling it online, and they didn't pay us anything, right? And that was how quick people actually respond to information. Okay, so I want to go quickly and talk about some things that you can play around with in your free time. Sort of try this method, and that's in generating advertising concepts. And again, I know that I am probably enemy number one if you are in the advertising industry and you think that AI is going to be your competitor, okay? But at the same time, it's an inevitable reality that a lot of companies are already using these tools to come up with initial concepts. So I'm just going to talk about how to use the method of Trisociation, at least as far as we have played around with it. So this is starting off with three concepts, right? Let's say your three random concepts, and saying, can we unite this? So ideally, we want to start off with an ideator, a person, a creative individual, and start thinking about that on their own. So in this case, umbrella, tree, and car. So can someone tell me an interesting idea, maybe a product idea, that combines umbrella, tree, and car? Anyone? Okay, so here, this is where you could actually give that to a generative AI model, and it would be able to combine that concept, right? So in some cases, you can actually give three unrelated concepts. Now, this is a very famous ad. Long before generative AI came into picture, okay, this was actually aired during Super Bowl, and it was fairly successful, at least in garnering attention. Nobody liked the ad, but has anyone seen this before? Okay. Anyone? What's the title of this? It's called Puppy Monkey Baby, yeah. So this one is, I don't know, it borders on cringe, but it's something, it's very sticky, right? Once you watch it, you'll not forget this ad, right? And the reason is because of that contrast, where they've united three concepts, in this case, a puppy, a monkey, and a baby, into a single character. So this is one example of Trisociation, of combining three concepts. I want to quickly talk about how you can take this, try out and experiment with this. Okay, you could, of course, start off with any three concepts. Let's say you're thinking about a beverage, and you could say, give me an idea or a visual concept that combines a beverage and along with two unrelated concepts. So in this case, it gave me a description and an ad. Clearly, it's not anyway, perfect or clear, but at the same time, our thinking is these could trigger some kind of thinking that can help a creative come up with concepts much more quickly. So I want to talk about one interesting potential application, which is in guerrilla marketing. Okay, and this is a play on the term, guerrilla marketing. So what is guerrilla marketing? Anyone? Okay, so it's a way to hack attention. So this term was coined by J. Conrad Levinson, who said that you could actually design ads, right, like billboard advertising, right, where you could actually come up with concepts that could help sort of quickly grab attention. So the goal is to grab attention, right? And if you look at these, if you just Google guerrilla marketing, you'll see all these different interesting concepts, and you'll see these patterns, right? You'll see that there are certain ideas that are sort of repeated. So one is extreme sizes, right? So you have, let's say, a water bottle, right? This is the typical size of a water bottle, right? And instead, you're having something maybe 10 times as large, right? Or 10 times as small, right? And so immediately your attention is drawn to that object, right? So one way you could use the method of Trisociation is, try to use that to generate, these kind of visual imagery, right? And how this becomes interesting is, let's say you start with a concept, okay? So a product or something that's focal to you, like in this case, let's say you're making an ad or a concept for a shoe company. So that's your focal concept. So you want your ad or your image to sort of represent that idea. But then you have two more concepts, right? Your concept 2 and concept 3, and you have a lot of flexibility in choosing that concept. You can choose the concept that it's distant, that means it's unrelated, right, to the first concept, and you could choose the third one to be close and similar to the concept. And you can also choose in such a way that the second term is different or unlike the third concept. So there are different ways of playing around with these words to come up with the optimum level of novelty versus acceptability of the idea. So in this case, let's say you have a shoe, which is a focal concept, and then a related concept called sports, and an elephant, and then it sort of created this visual. And here are some examples of what we've done with this, where you're having a focal concept, a related concept, and an unrelated concept, right? And you can come up with these interesting visuals. Again, I stress that these are not something that you want to put in front of your client, right? Or say, make a billboard. Instead, no, these are just triggers for your creativity. Okay, so that, what, maybe there's an idea which I haven't explored. And so this is a quick way of you to sort of take these ideas and then refine it and improve it and to make something that is valuable for your customer, okay? So I'll quickly talk about a very practical example. So let's say this is a nondescript pizza store, right? Now, suppose you've taken over the company and you want people to come and visit the store. So you're thinking of putting a big billboard there, right? Which draws people's attention, right? And says, we make pizza and you should try it out. So the way you would go about that is, in this case, your concept 1, which is your focal concept, is the pizza, right? And then you can play around with concept 2 and concept 3, and come up with novel ideas and novel concepts. So in this case, I've taken 2 unrelated concepts, music and bear. And so it gave me this particular image, right? So again, very eye-catchy, right? But again, don't just give this to the company. Take it and refine these concepts into something that is more appealing and acceptable, right? And here's another one. So here, I want to talk about what we sort of hinted at earlier, how generative AI is able to understand analogy, right? So here I said, can you come up with a concept that unites pizza, cheese, and bear, right? And what did it do? Okay, it sort of recognized this cheese, right, sometimes has a stringy appearance. And that stringy appearance is somewhat similar to the fur of the bear, right? And so it used that idea sort of to combine that into an image that is sort of visually appealing, right? And so that's, again, something that could be used as the basis for further thinking, right? And so you can take this further. You can come up with unrelated concepts, things that may be so disgusting, but at the same time, captures this tension. So pizza, ice cream, right? Not something that I would like, but definitely you put something like on a billboard, it's going to capture attention. So I'm nearly out of time, so I'll stop here and tell you that there's a lot. There's something that I talk about when it comes to generative AI. Unlike most technologies in the past which are disruptive, generative AI does not come with a user's manual, right? It doesn't tell you, well, do this and you get this, right? It's more of something like Lego bricks, where you're trying to build things completely new, right? And so I would say experiment, play around with it, right? Try new things which people haven't tried out before. And that could be a big source of competitive advantage for you in your occupation and what you do in. So thank you so much for your time.